even between Indonesians, there's always a great emphasis on relationships.
Yeah.
I personally can testify that, if you find the right person, you can solve a problem in one day. You meet the wrong person, you can wait 1 year, the problem is still there.
Yeah, and they will just tell you it cannot be done.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So it's always important that you emphasize building relationships, and when you build a relationship, always remember that when you're coming in, you are coming in to another country. This is not your country.
Yeah.
So please respect the people. Yes, even though sometimes investor wise they feel that I'm bringing in money in Indonesia, I'm going to set up my company, factory, what have you. I'll create employment, then I can do whatever I want. That is the wrong.
That's a wrong
thinking.
approach.
Yeah.
Indonesia is one of the biggest nations in Southeast Asia, with over 270 million people, making up to 40% of ASEAN population. That makes the country one of the biggest, but also the most complicated to tackle. My name is Aditya, and I'll be your host. I am a co-founder of Ravenry, a market research company that is based in Singapore, focusing on helping companies around the globe to enter Southeast Asian markets. And I think in this case today, we're talking about Indonesia. We have with us here today our guest, Andrew Tuah, partner at Tuah and Suparto law firm. Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you for joining us today. And hopefully you get to enjoy talking about Indonesia as much as I will over the next hour or so. But I think to kick this off, perhaps you could give us a bit of a background in terms of who you are and what you've done over the past decade or so. And also what your company does, so Tuah and Suparto law firm. Over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Pak Aditya, for having me here. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom.
Thank you for having me here again. So my name is Andrew, and I'm currently a partner based in Tuah and Suparto law firm. We are a law firm specializing in corporate matters, in particular foreign investments, in assisting foreigners to set up in Indonesia, doing business in Indonesia. We have been, our firm has been set up since 2001. From my parents' time, and now I'm running on the operations on the ground. A bit about myself. I was born in Hong Kong, and then we migrated to Singapore, and that's where you can hear my accent. I grew up in Singapore, educated in Singapore, and then I moved to Indonesia after O levels to pick up Bahasa and also to read law. And then thereafter I went to I graduated from law school, and then started to before I can become a practicing solicitor, I need to be naturalized as an Indonesian citizen. So now I'm a naturalized Indonesian citizen. My wife and kids are Indonesian, and we're living happily in Bali.
I think what's interesting about you as well is you were a foreigner that has been naturalized to now become Indonesian. I think that's very relevant to the topic that we're going to talk about today, which is navigating the culture in Indonesia, because I think you came in as a foreigner, and then now slowly over the years. And how many years have you lived in Indonesia for now?
20 odd years.
20 odd years. So practically you're a local. Well, you are.
I am now.
Officially a local also.
I have an NPWP as well.
Perfect. So I think you probably are one of the best sources that we can find out there to talk about this topic. I think I'm also Indonesian, born and bred, but I lived overseas for 15 years before I came back 6 years ago. So I think both of us coming from like two different backgrounds, but now are looking into how diverse the culture is in Indonesia and how different companies should navigate, the different clients or different people in Indonesia differently. Yeah.
Very much so.
Okay. So I think without further ado, maybe I do want to start with my first question.
Sure.
I think we talked about you being an ex-foreigner now living in Indonesia, Bali. I think maybe a lot of the audience out there are asking, I'm not Indonesian. How am I dealing with Indonesians, knowing that there are like 270 million that I need to navigate around?
Yep.
So I think my question is, having worked with many different Indonesians over the past 20 years, what is it like working with them, with us, with Yeah,
myself as
and
well.
and you too. How's it like working with yourself now that you're a different person? And how does it compare to working with people from different cultures like Singapore or Hong
China,
Kong or
yeah.
China?
Yeah. So basically, before I was naturalized as an Indonesian citizen, I was a Chinese citizen holding a Hong Kong SAR passport. Yeah, Chinese citizen. Okay. So and then when I got naturalized, then that's where I had to give up my Chinese
Yeah, because they don't allow
citizenship.
dual.
Yes,
Yeah.
they only allow you to have one nationality. So, well, from my experience working with Indonesians, I actually it can be a very pleasant experience. Okay, but one has to remember that Indonesia is has a population over 270 million, like you've correctly mentioned, and there are different cultures within Indonesia itself.
Yeah.
Okay, so one has to actually embrace the culture, and then accept it for what it is, and then slowly work together. And once the expatriate has accepted the culture, it's usually a very pleasant experience. And I've seen many expatriates who lived here, who worked here first, and then they decided to ask for the companies to even extend their appointments in Indonesia. And some of them, for those who are single, they find an Indonesian wife where they happily retire in Jakarta, Bali.
It sounds like a personal story.
Yeah, so I've seen many of this. So it can be a very pleasant experience. But of course, before that, the expatriate, or the person who's doing business here who's non-Indonesian, they have to accept that this is Indonesia. Indonesia has a very diverse culture. You can see the historical patterns, from the different empires to where we are right now as a modern day republic. Even if as a republic, Indonesia is still democracy-wise, is still quite. Yeah, we are still maturing as a democratic nation. So there are very different cultures, different way of doing things, how people communicate, how they act, how they live. I think it's important for the foreigner to come in and embrace all this, and not trying to think that they need to superimpose some of their concepts onto Indonesia. I always remember that this is Indonesia. You are in somebody else's land, so please respect the norms and cultures. And if you do that, make friends, make networking, diversify your networks. Then Indonesia is such a big market, big population. I don't see how your business would go south in that respect.
Perfect. I've also heard quite a bit about some of foreigner friends or founders who would just love to visit Indonesia once every 3 months and still stay in Singapore or wherever it is that their home country is, and just visit the country for like 1 day every 3 months. And they really find it hard to grasp the culture. They really find it hard to understand what's happening. What's your recommendation on that? So as a foreigner, a lot of them would be Singaporeans, for example. What's your proposed arrangement between Indonesia and other countries?
Well, in a sense, in order to actually experience the culture, you have to be here. So of course, falling short of making friends who are Indonesians in the respective countries of the expatriates, they should come and spend more time here, because sometimes when they meet an Indonesian who's abroad, it may not 100% reflect the culture that is here, because it depends on the background.
I'm one of the
how
examples
long the Indonesian has been away. Is that Indonesian more, I don't know, for lack of a better phrase, quote unquote Singaporean than he or she is Indonesian. So all these factors come into play. So when it comes to really experiencing, there's no other way to just immerse yourself in that country. I mean, you can always, Singapore and Indonesia is 1.5 hours flight time away. I mean, you can easily come in more often to actually experience it. And actually, in fact, a lot of times when this is speaking from my personal experience with when I interact with my clients who are foreigners, whatever they read in the media, they'll do some basic research, and then they'll come in with a particular frame of mind. And once they're in, they tell me, "Oh, Andrew, this is so different. Indonesia is way better than what I expected."
Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah. I think maybe then, I think we should probably talk as well about, you mentioned about your clients, you having been working with a client with things, Indonesia is much better than what they had in mind. I think then it's a good segue for us to talk about the businesses in Indonesia and how it is run. right.
Yes.
My question is then how are businesses run in Indonesia? And how is the hierarchy? Is it a very hierarchical working culture? Is it super strict when it comes to addressing someone and having that sort of you're much older than me that therefore I need to respect you and all that? So in terms of how it is run,
Yeah.
I think maybe it's a good way for a good one for you to talk about as well.
I think for clients who originate from Asia, be it North Asia or Southeast Asia, I think they will find Indonesia not too is how things operate here is not too different, yeah, in terms of how businesses are run. But of course, if clients are coming from the West, then they may need some time to appreciate the culture, and just merely adopt the culture and how things are run. So in a sense, Indonesia being a country in the East, in a sense Asia in this case, Southeast Asia in particular, there is still some hierarchical structure, yeah, when it comes to how to address people. um, I wouldn't say it's as strict as it is in Japan,
Yeah.
that I've experienced in doing business in Japan. But here is the same where the elderly, in the management or in whichever department, people who are less, not the same age group as them, they tend to respect them. There's always that respecting the elders concept here. So this is something which I think Asian, business players are more accustomed to. Whereas compared to, let's say, someone from the West.
Yeah, where they just call name, right?
Yes,
I
correct.
think
Here
it's
they
not
still
very
know. I
common.
mean, you can be a young director, but when you're meeting someone from another department, who is not in terms of structure wise may not be as near as the management level, but if the person is older, usually they will still address the person as Mr. Bapak. They wouldn't like just shout the name. They won't
which
do that.
probably
It's
is a bit unsafe.
as a form of respect. It's always because Indonesia as an Eastern country, we are still in a sense somewhat conservative, like in some sense, which I think is a good thing, though. I mean, it's always a good thing to have a respect to your elders.
I think it draws some like boundaries.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I think maybe that it alludes me to like the next question, right? So you've lived in Jakarta, you've lived in East Java, Central Java, Bali.
Yes.
Is there also like a different way to like how companies are working, how like different businesses are working across the four regions that you've been in, or they're practically somewhat similar in nature?
I mean, in terms of the legal framework, it's the same, except that there could be certain bylaws which are specific to certain locations. But overall, in terms of how businesses are run, generally the same. In terms of the good governance
And culture as well.
The culture will slightly differ because in Bali they have their own Balinese culture. As you are aware, that I think close to 90% or 95%, if I'm not wrong, of the Balinese population are Hindu. So the Hindu have their own Hindu calendar, and there are a lot of Hindu holidays that are actually not marked as national public holidays. So there can be a situation where in Bali it's a public holiday where banks in Bali are closed, but outside Bali it's still operating as per normal.
Okay.
So this again, it shows how diverse Indonesia culture is. Definitely.
Okay, that's very interesting because I've never worked in Bali like as in a corporate or a business perspective. So that's interesting as well for me.
Working in Bali, I do have Balinese clients, and it's the principle of running business is the same, just that Bali you can adopt a more, I would say, relaxed approach where people go to meetings wearing shorts.
I've experienced that.
I meet my clients, who own hotels. They meet with bankers. They come in with slippers
and shorts.
It's acceptable in Bali.
But
it may not be acceptable in Jakarta. But unless you are some big boss,
no one.
Yes,
even then, it's very.
But it's just not a sign of respect. In Jakarta wise, but in Bali that's fine. It's fine. I mean, I go and meet notaries wearing my shorts. It's okay.
And like caps, maybe not. Okay. That is very interesting. So I guess now that you can talk about all the four cultures, maybe that that gives us a bit more perspective as well. Because I keep telling everyone that Jakarta is not Indonesia. Bali is not Indonesia.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's completely like when you say Indonesia, you're not really talking about, I want to target Indonesia, meaning you're going to capture the entire 270 million people. That means you got to like segments who you want to target before you can actually,
Yep.
make a decision on
Yep.
where, what solution you want to,
Yep.
provide, right?
Of course.
So maybe you can also talk about some of the customs or traditions that should be observed when doing business in Indonesia. Maybe you can capture also like Bali or Jakarta
yeah.
and how they are also different. Maybe that
Yeah.
can give a
I
different
mean,
perspective.
yeah, definitely. In a sense, Indonesia, when in terms of the traditions, customs, is one must always understand which part of Indonesia doing business in, like what you correctly mentioned.
Yep.
Things may not be done, be done the same in Jakarta when compared to Bali. But the overall aspect is Indonesia is a place where there's a lot of emphasis on relationships. So I always tell my foreign clients is when you come here, apart from, of course, trying to meet your business objectives, you should also try to invest in building relationships, which whoever you are meeting, you be it your partner, a potential customer, or even your future employees. Do not bring the overseas mindset Indonesia and just superimpose, copy paste and superimpose. So take time to understand how the Indonesian people work, how they relate to each other. Even between Indonesians, there's always a great emphasis on relationships.
Yeah.
I personally can testify that if you find the right person, you can solve a problem in one day. You meet the wrong person, you can wait 1 year, the problem is still there.
Yeah, and they will just tell you it cannot be done.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So it's always important that you emphasize building relationships, and when you build a relationship, always remember that when you're coming in, you are coming in to another country. This is not your country.
Yeah.
So please respect the people. Yes, even though sometimes investor wise they feel that I'm bringing in money in Indonesia, I'm going to set up my company, factory, what have you. I'll create employment, then I can do whatever I want. That is the wrong.
That's a wrong
thinking,
approach.
Yeah. Of course, Indonesia government welcomes foreign investors a lot, and maybe I'll touch on later is how they've changed the legal landscape for that. But overall, one has to understand that this is still a foreign land to that investor, so he or she has to appreciate and embrace the local culture, and when doing business here, they should also make the requisite adjustments so that their own businesses can then flourish in Indonesia. If their business is, let's say, flourishing in Singapore, things are done in Singapore may not be the same as what they're doing here. So they have to observe, analyze, and then make the requisite adjustments in order to make the thing work here. Because I do see some foreign brands failing here.
We've seen that.
Yes, I've seen it before. So it's important that they need to embrace the local, how things are done here. Regardless of whether is it right or wrong in the foreigners' eyes, they just have to accept it.
Very unfortunately, which is also fortunately for Indonesia as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was always the two sides of the coin.
Yeah.
In that sense.
I think you did mention a little bit about personal relationships, building relationships, and I think I'm assuming in this case it is a personal relationship where I think it's super important for Indonesian to like even know your family members, or like they will talk about the wives, the husbands, the parents, the kids. So I think as an Indonesian myself, I think personal relationships is super important in Indonesia. I think maybe my question to you is how should one invest time and how can they build relationships in Indonesia or personal relationship?
Right.
What does that mean by building a relationship? And what are some of the concrete actions that one can take here?
These are all very practical questions. Thank you. Well, from my experience, in terms of building relationships, it's always trying to spend time with the person first. Your partner, for example, you have a potential JV partner, franchise partner, licensee partner. Spend time with them, and maybe in terms of going to their family, socializing with the families, that could be a second stage. Usually it's always with the immediate decision maker first. And then try to, instead of sitting down, taking a turnship and telling this is my terms, please comment. You don't do that in Indonesia. I mean, maybe for the younger generations, yes, could be, yeah. But for what I experienced over the past decades is that's a big no-no. You can show them that, yes, this is some of the term sheets, but we can discuss this over dinner, over, golf or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how you
So
start.
there is.
Yeah. Then once you feel comfortable, then of course, once you have that trust and that relationship, then you then evolve, that concept into a formal paperwork in the form of a term sheet or an MOU, etc. Yeah.
Do you think usually, having coffee, lunch, dinner, or drinks are more effective?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you dine with someone, I mean, it's not a psychological. I'm not a psychologist, but from what I understand, when you dine with someone, it shows that there's it changes the positioning. Yeah, in terms of the relationship with that person, is no longer a business, but now I know you in informal setting. So that's a good place to start, having meals and then slowly socializing. Like, maybe you can bring families inside. I mean, depending on the context, of course, what sort of business, the deal, location, etc. Then from there, you can bring in, even can do like, I invite your family over to Singapore. We can then host your family during a holiday, for example.
When it comes to that, right?
Yeah,
I think that's
or in China, I've seen the case where I invite everybody to go to China. And some even the bigger businesses, they will actually arrange a private jet. They'll fly the jet from China, pick the partners up, and then bring them to China. And then have a good time there. I mean, we've seen different. There are no right or wrong models that I need to emphasize. This is that is whatever works in that particular circumstance.
Yeah.
And there's no, again, what works in something like that, the foreigner to come in and then see the different things, how they react and stuff like that. Because you don't want to, like, the first, when you come in, okay, let's go for dinner. It becomes awkward, like, oh, why is he or she so, is there a personal, attraction, something like that, so, we want
it's too straightforward.
Yeah, exactly. So they need to see how it evolves, human beings, interactions and stuff. So, so far, there's that gradual, change from, the relationship, what level to which level.
Yeah.
And it cannot be superimposed.
Yeah.
Because it's all about emotions,
I think again, it comes back to your initial point, right? Just come and spend time in Indonesia, where your market is, and then you can sort of have a sense. And even then, it probably cannot be done in like a week or two, right? It has to be done in a prolonged period of time.
If the parties feel comfortable with each other after a couple of weeks, then good for them. But from my experience, it's slightly more than that. I mean, there will be a few rounds before things are. Unless the two of them know each other, like they went to the same school. They went to the same university.
An established connection prior to that.
Maybe in Singapore they serve NS together. I don't know.
Or from the same batch of like a uni or whatever.
Could be. Unless they have that, a commonality before that. But if not, otherwise it will take slightly more. In that respect.
I think maybe taking a step back before all this like coffee catch-ups and like dinners and going for golf together. I also feel like in Indonesia, WhatsApp is key compared to like emails, for example.
WhatsApp, you mean?
Yeah, like WhatsApp.
Right.
Yeah, so I think a step to like that is to, if you can get someone's WhatsApp,
yes,
that is a step, a big leap to actually establishing personal connection.
Yes. Yes, that's correct.
Because I don't think like emails or even LinkedIn work
not
well
so,
in Indonesia.
In Indonesia, WhatsApp is predominantly used. I mean, for now.
Yes.
For now,
yes.
Things are always changing. Who knows? They might use more WeChat.
Yes, and this is 2024, by the way.
Yeah.
Just in case someone from 2030 is watching in the future.
Yes. So we're now, in 2024, WhatsApp is widely used here. Of course, there are many, technology-based communication apps which a lot of Indonesians use, like Telegram and stuff. But from my observation over this past few years, especially during the pre-COVID, COVID, and now post-COVID, where we are right now, usually WhatsApp. They prefer using WhatsApp.
And even if they don't reply to your email, if you WhatsApp, then they'll just reply within like a few minutes.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Maybe then, because personal relationship is super important, what sort of questions or topics are appropriate to talk about if, based on your experience, with your business partners and acquaintances?
Well, they don't share much of their personal lives with me, but from what I gather is during this, when they do socialize, outside the office, they talk about hobbies, interests, and sometimes if at the right mood it leads to discussing about work, then by all means. I mean, I have seen a case where there was a deal that was actually sealed over dinner. Who would
And that's
expect that?
after how many meetings though?
No, that was slightly different because my particular client in this case went to the States with the Indonesian partner's
Oh,
son. Yeah, so it was the second generation. The fathers, they know each other, but the two of them went to the same college in the States.
okay. So again, like there was an
There's
established connection
there's
prior
that
to the
connection.
dinner.
So that's why we're okay. In rather than in a formal boardroom, we discuss and sign the minutes and resolution and whatnot. They agreed over dinner, over casual, and then they just text WhatsApp me. Okay, Andrew, I agreed this point. Can you go make an MOU based on this? So it's again very dynamic in a
Yep.
sense, with technology and ever fast, ever growing pace of doing business. I mean, there's no right or wrong as to what you should or should not say. It all depends on in that particular circumstance and the situation, what is the most appropriate, topic to discuss.
So I guess it leads us to the next question. Again, still in the building personal relationship.
Yeah.
And what are topics or questions that are appropriate, not appropriate to discuss? What are some of the taboos and big no-nos when it comes to doing business in Indonesia?
Okay.
Something that you've seen like fallen apart because someone says something or someone does something that is super inappropriate.
Yeah, when I've seen cases where my clients, they try to superimpose a particular culture in that situation, and that in a sense, it unfortunately for them, it touches on HR, human resources. Under the law, it's very clear that a foreigner should not be managing or handling HR affairs in Indonesia. Yeah, and this particular foreigner wanted to, I don't know, create his or her own, style of working in Indonesia. And in that particular case, it didn't end up very well because the Indonesians, when it comes to what you mentioned, personal relationships, they felt that now this is personal. To a foreigner, may not be personal. Yeah, to him, just I'm being professional. This is how it's done in my country. There's no wrong to it. It's efficient. It works in my country. He tried to, superimpose it in a tough way here. And as a result of which then that crossed certain lines. In sense of personal, they felt that this is no longer a office matter, but it's a personal, you don't like me because I'm Indonesian, blah, 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 blah. And all that. And it didn't end well for the foreigner. Like I said, this is home turf. So please, come here, knowing that this is home turf for somebody else, and then just accept it. So in the end, he left the company. I mean, they had to relocate him back to his home country. Yeah, in that sense.
So superimposing
your cultures,
culture into Indonesian
and disrespecting
culture
them, disrespecting the culture. And also another one is also religion. Indonesian religion. Religion's a very sensitive topic. So please, do not comment on a religion that you do not subscribe to. Yeah, that's a big no-no. You have to respect all religion. I mean, Indonesian, the religious practices are already enshrined in the constitution. So everyone have their subscribe to his or her own religion, and then just let it be. Don't try to educate or comment or be creative or try to give even if it's just a not, I wouldn't say nasty remark. It's just a casual remark. It's a big no. Please don't do that.
Yes, I totally agree with that. Yeah. And I think also be comfortable when someone asks what your religion is, because
no
people
problem.
here
No problem.
in Indonesia is actually asking what's your religion.
Yeah, you're allowed to, of course.
As long as you do not make any comments on that.
It's a mutual respect and
That one I think is probably like top 3 rules, about religion.
And
religion.
religion.
Very sensitive
because
topic.
in a sense, from the religious aspect, this is where I can then, it's not that I want to, but go back to Bali, okay, which is, it's actually like, for example, in the Balinese office setting, when there's a celebration, or you can order, let's say, a non-halal dish. in Bali, the famous one is babi guling. So, but you cannot do that in Jakarta.
Yep.
Even let's say you are the owner of a business does not subscribe to the Muslim faith, he or she has to take note of
Yep.
the dietary requirements of the Muslim colleagues. Yeah.
Yep. I agree.
That's
I agree
something
with
which
that.
you need to understand that doesn't mean you have babi guling in Bali, you can have babi guling in Jakarta as you celebrate it. Yeah, private.
Again, that's like a different culture.
Yes, you have
Even in different parts of
Yes.
Indonesia, you have to be very careful.
Yes, correct.
When it comes to catering for
Correct. Same thing
the needs of
in
your
Bali.
employees
Like
and your
you don't
clients.
like, for example, some of the Hindu employees they don't consume beef. Then you have to find something which everyone.
Okay. Yep.
See?
Yep.
So, but I mean, it's not every location has their own specific culture, and
Yeah.
the only way to do that is please spend time here. Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other like taboos or big no-nos in Indonesia? How about drinking? Because drinking in like Hong Kong, in Singapore,
Yeah,
in
I understand.
Australia
In
or
China,
the
for
US
that
or
matter,
China, like
Yeah.
drinking is like a part of building relationship.
Yeah, but here in terms of drinking wise, one has to see like who are their drinking partners. If, for example, if the person who wants to drink is fine with drinking, then it's fine. But bear in mind that Indonesia is a world's largest Muslim population. So there are certain regulations in Indonesia where it needs to be observed in terms of drinking. Like certain places you cannot buy or you cannot consume alcoholic beverages outside the specified premise designated by the government.
Yeah.
So these are the things which the expats, when they come in, they just have to be mindful of.
Yeah.
But of course, if you're an expat, you want to bring alcoholic beverages into Indonesia, that's not an issue because custom regulations do allow specified quantity which one can bring in on a duty-free basis, and you can then consume this privately at your residence.
Yeah. I think maybe the way I'd like to summarize it is when it comes to like drinking, for example, like outside of Indonesia, and outside Indonesia, like you can assume that your client is drinking.
Yeah.
But I think in Indonesia, like I think the first question is you need
Yes.
to ask, do you drink?
Yes, you have to respect. Yes.
Yeah, and if they say no, then maybe you can find an alternative way to like
Yes,
build
you
that
can drink
personal
something else
relationship.
during the meal for the meal.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else that you can think about when it comes to like taboo and no-nos? Because I think this is a very
I think respecting also in terms of the office setting is the different genders. Yeah, I mean sometimes I understand that in Western cultures, people are more open to like receiving hugs from other people.
Yeah.
Here, please don't do that.
Yeah.
It's Indonesia again. It's from the east. It's more conservative. It's nothing to do with religion. But it's more conservative.
Yeah.
And especially if you are touching the opposite sex in terms of hands or what, it's a big no-no as well.
Yeah.
So please respect the local culture.
Yeah.
Here.
So I think unless they like give their hand,
maybe if not, then
maybe I think usually we do like
we
this,
do this,
right? So I think that is probably like
that is
especially after COVID, this is probably like the safest way for us to
correct.
like greet someone.
That is correct.
And it can never go wrong.
Yes,
I think
that is the most conservative way. Yeah. So it's slightly different. So the expat who comes in need to just bear in mind, that it's not the West where people hug each other freely. As a form of a greeting, for that matter. So just have to be aware that it's slightly different here. Things are done slightly different here.
And also, do not feel offended if you.
And somebody doesn't. Yeah,
if
it's
someone
fine.
doesn't
it's fine,
reciprocate
exactly,
with your handshake.
That's pretty normal. I mean, it doesn't mean that they don't respect you. It's just that they have certain beliefs which they subscribe to, and therefore they prefer to greet you in a different way.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean they don't respect you.
Okay, so I think all the personal relationships that we've talked about and how to build personal relationships, essentially it comes to like building trust, right? With the people that you speak with, the people that you're trying to build a relationship with. So what strategy have you actually seen working extremely well when it comes to building trust in Indonesia as someone who was an ex-foreigner when you first, if you think about like your first 10 years
Yeah.
in Indonesia
Yeah.
and how you've navigated your way around building that relationship and trust in Indonesia with your
Yeah.
clients and employees. Yeah.
I mean, it's when it comes to building trust, is you have to spend time with the counterparty, and then what better way than to have a meal first, and then go on to other socializing activities. But there's again no right or wrong. It really depends on the counterparty, on
Yeah.
how well you know them, or what a sort of commonality that you share with them, and then build on those. For example, if one likes to engage in a particular sport like golfing, then by all means, after having a series of meals with the counterparty, then you can always say, okay, why not let's do golf this Saturday, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
How about like building? I know there are like some, for example, expat communities or communities that is like based on like industry. Because I feel like communities are like
Oh
a
yeah,
thing
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Indonesians.
There is.
Do you think
There
that's also like a good strategy to like just enter that community and like follow
Yes.
along whatever they do,
Yes,
and then you can sort of
definitely.
start to build
That's a
that
good
trust.
platform that expatriate can tap onto, because in the sense that in that particular community, there will be expats who spend more time here, maybe even a permanent resident here. Then he or she can definitely, when they engage and discuss, then they can, I wouldn't say absorb or learn, but I would say they hear more stories, and
Yeah.
then from there, then hopefully that will help them, accelerate their immersion experience in Indonesia. But of course, you must also listen to the right expat, because you must listen to more,
Yeah. I think also,
diversified,
yeah, yeah. I also probably would have to like prompt people to not fall into this expat bubble.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Because
Yes.
yeah, a lot of expats in Indonesia, for example, they think that they know everything about a particular topic.
Yes, there are
But
there are
it
groups like
is
that. Yes.
just the expat bubble that you need to be mindful of.
Yeah.
And actually just mingle with the locals are still required.
I
at
think.
some-
Yeah, I think the more the person communicates or engages with that expat community, then he or she should very soon start to gather the different views.
Yeah.
Because there will be definitely some expatriates who feel that they're better than everyone else. There are some who just really accept and embrace the culture and even dream of being an Indonesian one day. So just listen to everybody. I mean, there's no harm to listen, and then slowly from there, you make your own judgment as to what what works best for you ultimately in the day, because no one knows you better than yourself.
Yeah.
And then how you actually grow your business or your career if you're working in Indonesia, it's really up to you. So, yeah.
Okay. I think the next question is actually super interesting. We're talking about misconceptions or
Okay.
common mistakes that people have about Indonesia
Okay.
or Indonesians.
Yes.
If you can name like the top three.
Well, this actually depends on the expatriates' understanding of Indonesia. Okay, some older expatriates may not have pleasant memories about what they read, what they hear, what they see in the news about Indonesia, whereas some of the younger ones, they don't grow up with that knowledge. Can't remember the psychological term, but it's not embedded in their in their mind in that sense. So it all depends. And again, different type of expatriates, they must also see what sort of Indonesians they interact with, because the Indonesians of the past are very different from Indonesians now.
Yeah.
So one has to experience that, an Indonesian, let's say in the 90s, that they engage with, will be very different from the Indonesian, the same same age gap, same age group, but different years. One is the 90s, one is, let's say, 2024. It's entirely different. So you must understand that Indonesia has undergone massive changes over the past few decades. As we've raised before, from different type of government to now a young democracy. And even then, the people here right now, there's a middle class that is growing. People are getting more educated. There's more interaction with overseas rather than compared in the 90s where interaction is still there but limited.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially and then also with now with technology where, an Indonesian can access news, from overseas media. Previously they were only reading it in newspapers and watching it in a big square box television in the 90s. Now you can access it on your phone anytime, even on this watch.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's in a sense the technology is so diverse, it's so different. So in the terms of the misconceptions, it really depends on what the experts, what is his or her dogmatic view of Indonesia is, right? But just to name a few, they maybe perhaps they feel that Indonesia are not so welcome to investors in the past. There could be some instances during the Asian financial crisis in the 90s where some of them were traumatized about what they read and what they hear, what they see in the news. So I always tell them, why don't you come here? I do see a lot of investors from North Asia looking to invest in Indonesia over the past 2 years actually. They call it diversification of supply chain. Okay, as a result of COVID, there could be a trade war between East and West. Yeah, could be. So to cut a long story short, they were like, Andrew, this is the first time I come to Indonesia. It's beautiful. It's not what my father told me. The father would have read, the Asian financial crisis, what happened here, right? So in a sense, I always tell them, see, that's where you go. You misconceive Indonesia.
Yeah.
You misunderstood. They will tell me, oh, I feel okay here. I feel safe, walking at night. I'm like, you have to take your own precautions, of course. I said, this is not your own country. You can walk at night, maybe 12 a.m. in the morning, you still feel safe. It's your country. I said, this is not, you still have to take precautions, but nonetheless, they still feel that it's different from what they expected before they land, and now before they depart back to North Asia, and they feel in a sense they feel that it's different from what I expected.
You expected, yeah. Okay, so the first misconception is Indonesia is not very keen in getting foreign investments or interactions.
They're not
so that is
foreigners in a sense.
And I think that's not true because I think even the governments are trying, producing a lot of enacting a lot of regulations that will invite direct foreign direct investments, for example.
That is correct.
What's the second one, what you can think of?
Well, the second one is, of course, again, they come to Indonesia with their own expectations of what an employee should be, what an employee should do, how he or she should act, and what he or she needs to deliver. Pretty much A to Z. So they come in with that particular frame in mind, saying that you have to fit into this. Otherwise, you are subpar. Or different, from what I expect. So again, they have to then understand that whatever they heard, whatever created them to have this wrong conception, this idea, come in here, just work with them. The younger generations are different.
Yeah.
Like I said, each Indonesian, like the Indonesian that it was in the 90s or even in the 2000s, is different from what it is now. And it will continue to evolve as education, as government spend, Indonesian government, they invest more in education. And they also, at the same time, try to change the legal framework to how doing business. They try to make, the ease of doing business in Indonesia is one of the government's priorities.
Yeah.
And as they do this, the population of Indonesia will then have to react to this. And then, and when there's more international exposure, cross-border transactions, cross-border interactions, and as globalization, plays its part, then where, everyone is connected to each other, then that Indonesian that you have a misconceived about what he should do, what his deliverables, everything, you can start to see that it's starting to fade away. I mean, yes, of course, I wouldn't want to whitewash things. That you will never meet your expectation of your own country. You must understand each country is different. Different historical background. I mean, I would dare say to that person, your country was once like that. Right? Over time, it evolved. So you have to understand that, things will get better, things will change, but it's not instant.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the second one that I always
Yeah.
hear some of my clients grumble about.
Yeah. So the misconception is then you can somehow impose your
Your style of
expectation
working
and style of working into the
yes,
Indonesian.
correct. And if they don't conform,
cultures,
then they are different. Then then you start to feel you're more superior, which I feel is wrong. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's wrong. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a third one or?
The third one, not really though. I mean, these are the few things which they always come and misconceive about. Yeah, it's pretty much that. Yeah.
Okay. How about maybe I can prompt you? I think some of the audience that we have here are probably mostly in the millennials, Gen Z, right? So I think most of the people that we're watching this are in the startups.
Yeah.
They will be building their own startups or wanting to scale their startups into Indonesia, for example.
Yeah.
A lot of the things that are talked about Indonesians is that we are very laid back.
Laid back.
Yes. In terms of, our working style, we're like, oh, we can do this later. We'll do this tomorrow. There's always next time, basically. Because of the I don't know, the cultural imposed, I don't know.
Okay.
But yeah, I think the general comments that I've been getting from people my age, at least, is that working with Indonesians sometimes can be a bit difficult because they tend to delay things,
Procrastinate.
or procrastinate. Yeah, yeah. Do you feel like your experience in your field? Do you think that's something that can be a misconception as well?
Yes and no. In a sense, it depends on where the business is at. Where is the business player they're doing conducting business? So, for example, if you are conducting business in Jakarta, where things are faster paced, then I see less procrastination on the part of the employees. Actually, on the contrary, in terms of the speed, how they work, some, not all, some of the employees in Jakarta, they're not as different as what you expect in other,
Yeah.
one of the more developed countries in ASEAN, or even in North Asia for that matter. But one has to understand that, of course, in terms of the procrastination, all this is all coming to the culture of the background, the education, what was his or her family like, where he or she grew up. There's no right or wrong in a sense, whether there's a general misconception. No, it depends. Because I do see, some Indonesian employees do reply, emails in late hours at night. I do. And I do see them
Especially
also
the
replying.
big tech startups.
It can be just even a normal company I've seen, a trading company. And my clients, I have Indonesian clients who invested in Indonesia. Their Indonesian employees actually reply to my WhatsApp text early in the morning. So you can see the different style of, I'm not saying whether they should reply or not in the morning. I know some people prefer you shouldn't disturb me in the morning or what, what I'm trying to say is, there are this particular group of employees or Indonesians who feel that there is a need to get things done. Okay, that's one spectrum. Of course, you have another spectrum if you moved outside of Jakarta, to other provinces. They may not share the same view. They may not appreciate the same view. The priorities are slightly different. Again, there's no right or wrong. You must understand. Sometimes, like in those areas, the majority of the population there, for example, happen to be farmers. So you cannot expect the child of a farmer, to interact or to actually deliver or work, perform in the same way you would as a child or
From a metropolitan
or growing up in a metropolitan setting. And if he or she has exposure to international community, you cannot expect the two of them to do the same thing.
I think to me, maybe what matters also is Indonesians are usually very family oriented. Right? I think family plays a very important role in what they do for
Yes.
work as well. So family always takes the first priority in most cases.
Yes.
And I think that's probably what creates that, I've got my family this and family that. My family is sick. I need to take care of them.
Oh yeah.
I think that plays a really big
Oh
part
yeah. Yes.
in how the work is being delivered as well.
It does.
And I do feel like a lot of Indonesians actually really prefer, at least this is my experience, they prefer, or we prefer, like a more what do you call it, not relaxed, but like a work that is not 9 to 5, so they can
Flexible
work
working
that is
hours.
super flexible working hours. Is that true for you as well?
Yeah, some, of course, ever since COVID, it's changed how people work, the timing as well. People end up working more than actually before COVID, if one notices.
Yeah.
I'm one of them. Okay, I can work
Same
remotely. In the sense, it's so that's the beauty of it, is that when you talk about families, it still plays an important factor. It's like sometimes when we are, for example, when I help some of my clients set up in other areas outside Jakarta, and when they are trying to hire, I wouldn't say management, but more senior employees, the question of that candidate was like, can I bring my family along, and will the company have a additional benefit to subsidize or otherwise cover the relocation cost? And we do see that asked many a time. So in a sense, family is, yes, they do place an important role, but of course there are also a lot of Indonesians out there who travel, who are working remotely and away from their family. So it all depends on the setting, and there's no right or wrong. Like I said, it all depends on the setting, the background of the candidate, his or her, upbringing, and also past the spouse as well. I mean, if the spouse doesn't really understand, then we have a problem, right? So it's a combination of factors which then again leads back to the foreigner coming here with an open mind to see how to make what works best in the circumstances.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. Okay. Now the next question is actually super practical.
Right. Okay.
It's probably the most practical question of what we've asked before. But when a foreigner wants to meet an Indonesian client,
Okay.
do you have any tips on what they could prepare before this meeting?
Yeah, I mean, coming to Indonesia just to experience Indonesia as it is, as what it is. I mean, if they've not been to Indonesia before, okay, let's put it this way: they have not been to Indonesia before, then please come here, on your own personal, for leisure, for whatever, and just to experience Indonesia as you experience it first. All right, so that then from there you can then know how to interact with the Indonesian, right? At least there'll be some common language that the two of you can converse about during your conversation. For those who have been into Indonesia, then please come in. Like again, I said, coming here, understand that again, this is a foreign country. It has its own norms, cultures. Please come in with an open mind. All right, I'm not saying that they should learn the culture and embrace it. That's a bit too forward, in a sense. That could be phase 2 or phase 3. But as an initial first phase, they can start to, just to come in here with an open mind, and then, from there, do a comparison between, what you are accustomed, to in your home country, and then what things you could adopt, learn new things, because this is a new country. It's a land with bountiful opportunities. Come here with open mind, just and see how to make things work out.
And again, do not impose.
Please don't do that.
Culture.
I mean, you can have your own internal personal opinion. You can have that. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but please do not voice it out unnecessarily and try to change somebody's way of doing things.
Yeah. I think maybe if I can add to that is also knowing how to call or how to call someone Bapa and Ibu.
Oh yeah. That's also important. Otherwise, it'll be very awkward,
Otherwise, yeah,
Yeah,
because
if you call,
Indonesians are not very used to being just called name.
yes,
I think
Yes.
Bapa stands for Mr. and Ibu
Yes,
stands for
yes.
Mrs.
Yeah.
So I think if you familiarize yourself with that, Bapa and
Yeah.
Ibu, I think you are
Yeah.
halfway there. Okay, so I think maybe the next couple of questions, which are also our last few questions, are to do with the regulations.
Right.
So I think maybe it is also a good opportunity for you to talk about what your company usually does, how you help your clients, and then if you can link that back to the regulations that are relevant to foreign investors and startups, and how to navigate around that. Well, not around, but how to,
Make things work.
make things work for,
Definitely, yeah.
for you. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, we are a corporate law firm. Yeah, specializing in foreign investments. So in a sense, I'm very blessed that I grew up, outside of Indonesia. I was born in Hong Kong, grew up in Singapore. You can hear from my accent. And then I moved back to Indonesia to pick up law, like I mentioned just now. So I'm very blessed in the sense that I can converse with clients in different languages, English, Bahasa, of course, Mandarin and Cantonese. So in that particular instance, I can then help to bridge the culture between the two, different parties in the transaction, in that sense. So over the past, few decades, we have seen the change of the Indonesian legal system. Okay. Again, like I said, there's a certain misconception. So foreigners read and see things which are different from what they expected, and then they felt that Indonesia is a difficult place to do business. Well, I would say that the past few administrations have done a good job. In the sense, they have actually revamped the legal system to a certain extent. Of course, it's not an entire overhaul. It's not possible, although it's somewhat what the business community want. But there will never be a situation where everybody is satisfied. Like for example, the latest change was the introduction of the job creation law during COVID. Yeah, of course, there were certain parties claiming that there were certain steps that were not entirely handled properly by the current administration and stuff, and then subsequently there was rectifications, etc. And even now, there are still pros and cons. So it's never possible to actually satisfy everybody. But from what I've seen so far in the past few years since the enactment of that job creation law, is that Indonesia's ease of doing business is rising slowly. Yeah, they have simplified certain things. There's a centralized portal called the OSS, Online Single Submission Portal. I'm sure you're familiar. Your company should be registered there as well. And it's quite simple in the sense doing business, because in terms of having a centralized portal means that as long as the portal is running, okay, then things can be processed in a matter of hours. Okay, so of course, the OS portal was modeled to be similar to the centralized portals you have in the neighboring countries of Indonesia. The Indonesian government learned a lot from the different developed countries.
Yep.
And they want to replicate. So that's why there's this enactment of this OSS portal. It is currently administered by the central government, Ministry of Investment. So the gist of it is that all primary compliances, let's put it this way, primary compliances will be through that portal. In a sense, everything is done through that portal. You don't have to submit any paper applications anymore. So it's a matter of, as long as you have an account there, your company is properly set up, the license will come down. Of course, this portal can always be improved. Let's put it this way. Always be improved. But nonetheless, you can see that the intention from the government is to try to make things simpler, cutting red tape, so that businessmen can then focus their attention to doing business and not,
Not the,
spend resources on compliance and whatnot. Compliance in the OS system is still there. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that once you get yourself registered, boom, everything is done, then you don't have to do anything. No, it's the OSS system itself would tell you what sort of compliance you need to do. So you can actually see from what is your business category and what are the compliance steps that are expected of you. Then of course, that's why I said then these are primary compliance. There will be secondary compliance where you may still need to go to other government departments to get that actual hard copy paperwork to then effectuate your license onto the portal. Again, but it's still a major step, right? I give you a very, very simple example. Before the enactment of this, maybe a decade or so ago, to set up a company, it took easily 3 months, some even 6 months. Some you even have to go to a specific government body and present your business plan to them, where they will then tell you what is right or wrong before they give you the approval. Interesting. I mean, I can see the appeal of why they want to do that. They want to get all this so they can get ideas and data for perhaps their own population. Maybe, could be. Then things have changed where they have actually introduced this OSS system where things can be done in less than 1 week. From a few months to 1 week. My mother's time, she was a practicing lawyer in Hong Kong, and she dealt with Indonesian work before because of our Indonesian heritage. She was telling me, I think back in Pak Harto's time, it took 3 years. 1 year. I think she told me, was it 1 year with Ministry of Investment, and then 2 years waiting for somebody's signature, ultimately leading to Suharto's signature himself.
Wow.
That was in the 80s, of course. So you can see the change from back then and now. Of course, now there's always future. So there's always room for improvement. But what they have done over the past few years is, I would say, quite remarkable. And definitely you can actually see that the actual amount of the investor influx into Indonesia this past few years, even during COVID, there are still investors investing here. It's quite remarkable. Of course, you can always tie it back to certain, political diplomacy. For example, we have the One Belt One Road from North Asia, right? You have the different initiatives from the different, developed countries in Southeast Asia, encouraging, companies to expand Indonesia. You can have all that. But generally, overall, we have seen the investor confidence starting to rise slowly. And the laws, have been changed over this past few years. Of course, more can be done. Definitely, you are never able to meet the investors' expectation. But overall, I think we're heading into the right direction. And currently, the current administration has actually placed very good foundation for future governments to actually just build upon. And as we take Indonesia forward, I mean, there's always the current vision of of course, I don't speak for the Indonesian government. I'm not from the government. Yes. I may dress like one, black and white now. But there's this concept of, they call it Indonesia Emas 2045.
I've heard of that.
Golden Age of Indonesia 2045. So right now they know that they cannot change Indonesia to what they want immediately. So they're trying to lay groundwork like OSS system, job creation law, all this slowly, with the hopes that you will lay the small foundations leading to a bigger pavement towards 2045. This is what I observe as a practitioner, private practitioner, of the law. But I think it's a good thing for Indonesia.
And Indonesia, maybe we can touch base a bit about Indonesia 2045. I think the goal is to make Indonesia top 5 economy in the world, where Indonesia is, I think, number 8 now.
Yes, definitely. So you can see the different policies enacted so far. They are always forward thinking, they're requiring some energy companies not just to take the raw materials and go. They're expected to actually do refinery work, value adding work here. So you can see there's a change in the policy. definitely.
Yeah.
And as the younger generation Indonesians come into government, I mean, the sky is the limit, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for the audience who probably are mostly foreigners here, 2045 is going to be like 100 years since we gained independence in 1945. So that's probably why the government is setting 2045 as like the
target,
the targets of
Yes.
us being one of the top 5
It is.
nations in the world.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think maybe just one question about OSS. I think that's would be of people's interest as well. When was that deployed, and how long has it been?
I'm afraid I might get it wrong actually. I think it was just before COVID.
So it's quite recent. So the past 5 years.
Yeah, I think If I recall correctly, I can't. But I remember it's a recent thing. And it resolved from OSS 1.0, then there was a 1.1. And there's a 2.0.
Yeah.
So the current one is 2.0.
And even in that short amount of time, you've seen
definitely
a vast improvements in how foreign companies are actually entering the market.
And every investor I spoke to said, I love OSS because it's so fast. I mean, even though, like I said, it's just primary compliance. But nonetheless, if let's say you are in let's just give a background of the whole compliance system. Yeah. So under the OS system, your compliance is actually determined by your risk level. Okay, the risk level is something which the government determines. So you cannot say that, I don't feel my business is risky. So why? You can't. It's already determined.
So it's your entry point.
Yes.
Essentially.
So too bad. You just have to accept it.
Yeah.
Okay. Good or bad, you have to accept it.
Yep.
Right. I mean, So the government is always changing, their assessment on the risk level and stuff. But overall, essentially, is the lower the risk, the less compliance you have to attend to, which is, I think, consistent with international market practice, right? So, for example, if you're a trading company, most likely, I can't say it's for sure, but most likely, your risk will be low risk. If you are low risk, means the NIB will suffice, the business identification number. They call it now. Nomor Induk Berusaha. That's what they call it now in 2024. It will suffice. And then from there, that will act as your trading license. Of course, if you are importing products, you still need to look into the different, import conditions, if you like. But overall, that is your business license. Your sacred license is your NIB if you're low risk. Then moving on, there will be medium low, medium high, and high risk. So, in a sense, different risk levels will result in more compliance is required. So, let's say a medium low risk will have a lot less compliance requirements than a high risk line of business. So everything is done through the OSS portal, and then from there, there could be secondary compliances, like I said, depending on where your business is located. Like, for example, if you have a business located, for example, a factory that is located in central Java, then you might need to attend to the secondary compliances with the local, provincial, or even the regency government. But it's not possible to incorporate everything to OSS now. But the intention is there. Okay, so let's see how the incoming administration will then, make further improvements and see how this OSS will evolve. Because the more it evolves, it will make Indonesia doing business easier, and as a result of which, then dynamics will be very interesting to see when that happens.
Very interesting. Yep. I think also bringing in foreign direct investment is also one of Indonesia's government's goals, right?
Yes. I mean, FDI has been steadily rising over the past few years.
Yeah.
You can see from the government statistics.
I think the last news that I read was there are currently around almost 700,000 foreign companies in Indonesia.
Not surprised, it could be more. It could be more because.
And I think with that OSS portal, then it's potentially going to be growing.
There will be more. Definitely.
And now the good thing is now it is actually centralized. So
yes,
we would have captured most of the
definitely.
The foreign companies within that portal as well.
Exactly.
Okay. I guess then it is important for us to talk about the available entities that we have in Indonesia. and how that can be relevant to the audience.
Well, under the current laws in 2024, as an investor, there will be actually two main entities that you can actually, do business in Indonesia. Number one, of course, is setting up of the private limited. They call it PT, Perseroan Terbatas. Then PT PMA. PMA stands for Penanaman Modal Asing, which is foreign investment. So you can set up a PT PMA, which is similar to any private limited in any jurisdictions. You have limited liability status, and then from there you can do business, and then your compliance will determine what sort of business you're doing and how it's reflected in the OSS system. So that's one option. To set up a company, like I said, it takes less than 1 week. Yeah. So that's quite, in a sense, it gives options to the investor. The next one will be a representative office. They call it Kantor Perwakilan. So far, in other Indonesian laws, as of right now, there are a few. There's a normal representative office, there's a trade, then there's a foreign airline, there's a construction, there's oil and gas. So there are different types, but the main ones will be the service representative office and the trade representative office. So the service representative office is the normal rep office we call, which is actually to allow the foreign company to promote the services or mainly predominantly services, whereas the other one is the trade one is to promote the goods. So in essence, these two rep office allows the foreigner to promote whatever service, whatever products that they want to sell in Indonesia. You can set up a rep office here. It takes less than a week to do so, again, through the OSS system.
Yeah.
The only catch is that as a rep office, you are not allowed to generate income here. So all monies paid by Indonesian customers have to pay to your principal country, wherever you are.
So may not benefit you if your clients are mostly Indonesians.
Depends, yes and no.
Travel.
Yes and no. I have seen cases where the client comes in as a rep office, because as a rep office, there is no minimum expenditure or minimum investment amount or the paid up capital required. Under current laws, 2024, the paid up capital required for a PT PMA is IDR 10 billion, which is about, 700,000 USD, plus and minus, depending on the exchange rate, 2024. Okay, so the rep office, you will not have all these so-called capitalization requirements, which allows the company to come in here, which is very practically no investments. You just need an office, hire employees.
Hire someone.
Even in the office setting, you don't need to have a physical office. You can incorporate a PT PMA or the rep office using
like a virtual
space. Yeah.
Okay, co-working space.
See, so that's like Bloxham, right?
Yep.
So that is a possible scenario. So you don't actually need to have a physical office space. So rep office is very the requirements are quite minimum. So you cannot collect money in Indonesia. You cannot invoice from Indonesia, but you can of course invoice from your parent company, and then the Indonesian customers pay direct. I've seen a case where they come in here, and then my clients come in here as a rep office, and they start selling to the Indonesian customers, and then slowly when they feel that there is a sizable volume, that's where they then incorporate the PT PMA. Of course, there could be instances as well where because of the trade volume is quite substantial, and the Indonesian company feels that, look, I don't want to remit overseas and in a foreign currency. I want to have more control over, the fluctuation. They want to minimize certain risk exposure, and that's where they then tell the rep office, look, you need to set up a PTPMA. So there could be such a scenario as well. But I have seen, some of my clients operating rep office happily for the past 20 years. And the customers are happy, they are happy, everyone is happy. So why, if everyone is happy, then there's no need to change. Right?
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to tap onto. There is an indirect way of doing business. Is you can do it through franchise or licensing as well.
Okay. Yep.
I mean, of course, that does not actually involve setting up an Indonesian entity here, but you can do it. Use that that channel to then set up your business model through a franchise or even a licensing arrangement. That's possible as well.
Okay, so basically there are like a few options.
Yeah,
if you want to tap into
yes.
the market, you can go into direct, which is through the PT or PT PMA
rep
or rep office,
yes.
and then you can also go indirect using
franchise
the franchising model.
And help.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I have. So perhaps as my last question,
Yes.
what would be your advice for foreign startups or companies who's looking into entering Indonesia?
Right. Very practical question. Again, it comes down to my belief that when one wants to do business here, they have to be here. If if possible, of course, set up a rep office. That's always my advice, because when a business, overseas business, yeah, dishes out a name card to any Indonesian customer or government official, and they see as a foreign address, they'll be like, okay, you're not here. Are you serious?
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas if they give you dish out a name card and you see an Indonesian address, even though it's a rep office, the reception is different. And to set up a rep office is not really difficult.
One
So,
week, you said, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I said, please, just set up a rep office, and it's also not difficult to close the rep office if you feel that this is not the right time to continue your expansion. It's also not difficult. So in a sense, my advice is, yeah, you should come down, set up an office if you feel that this is actually something which you want to do, and then from there build on it.
Yeah, yeah. And understand the culture.
Of course,
as well, of
definitely,
Indonesians. Yeah.
as part of the process. Yeah,
Okay.
go and ride the rainbow. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I think that's all for today. I think as a closing remarks, then I would like to summarize what we've talked about so far, which is I think Indonesia again is a massive culture, 270 million people,
And growing.
and growing, because our birth rate is still one of the fastest
Yes.
in the region.
Yes.
So Indonesia is big. It's very complicated. The cultures are very different, even in different parts of Indonesia. Like but Andrew here, he's worked in 4 different regions, and almost everyone has got their own, ways of working. And I think one of the message that we need to address here as well is you need to actually be in the country, learn the culture, learn as you go.
Yes. Very
And
much so.
book your ticket to Indonesia as soon as possible if you are thinking into doing a business in Indonesia.
Yes.
And I think from a government perspective, Indonesian's governments have been working really hard over the past few years to improve, the ease of doing business in Indonesia. And hopefully that will be a good sign for, everyone who's looking into the market. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Andrew.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.